everyone, I'm Miss Lydia from the Boston Library. Thank you for joining me for our craft project. Today I'm going to show you a couple of simple art projects that you can do with the kids at home. The first one is a nature-inspired sun catcher. So the supplies that we need are some paper plates, clear contact paper, and an assortment of flowers. So you can do this ahead of time. If you want to take the time, you can take your flowers, you can press them in between books for a couple of weeks until you've got them really well dried. Or as an option, you can microwave dry them. The best method that I've found is to stack them in between paper towels, and then you want to put something heavy on top of them that is obviously microwave safe. So what I found works the best for me is a flat baking dish. So I have some flowers here. I have pressed them between books, but only for a couple of hours just to get them nice and flat before I put them into the microwave. So I have those in between my paper towels. I'm going to put this in the microwave for like a minute and 30 seconds. You want to be very careful if you do this method when you take that glass pan out. Obviously, whatever you're putting down on top of these has to be microwave safe. You don't want to ever microwave them for more than a minute increment. If you're using the microwave method to dry your flowers, what you'll notice is after that first initial microwave time of like about a minute, your paper towel will have some moisture in it. What the microwave does is it cooks that moisture out of your flowers so it dries them faster. You might want to add an additional layer of paper towels in between, and then you're just going to continue to microwave it on short intervals until you have dried flowers. Remember, be very careful removing if you use a baking dish on top to weigh it down, because it will be very hot. The amount of time it takes to dry your flowers is going to be very dependent on the amount of moisture in them. So these bleeding hearts, for example, they have a lot of moisture in them. They took quite a bit longer than like the small forget-me-nots. If you're using leaves or things like that, they're going to tend to take less time. You can use whatever you pick off of the yard. Our next step is to make our frame for our sun catcher. So I'm just using a basic paper plate. You can use any size that you have on hand, and then you're going to cut out your circle. You can kind of fold it in half. It doesn't have to be exact. Get your slit in the middle, and then cut around the border. You can cut just on the inside if you want a wider frame, or you can cut all the way out to those ridges. Once I have my frame ready to go, you are welcome to decorate it any way you want. I'm going to leave mine just a basic white, but you can of course color it in with crayons or markers or colored pencils. Then I'm going to cut my contact paper so that I have a square that's just a little bit bigger than my circle. And then I'm going to remove that backing paper from the contact paper. I'm going to lay it sticky side up on my table, and then I'm going to put my frame down on top of it. You can do that and stick that down pretty solidly. You want it to be as flat as you can, so whatever you can do to get rid of those wrinkles. Most contact paper you can kind of lift and replace, so if you do get a wrinkle, it's not the end of the world. And then I'm going to trim off the excess. For a little bit of added strength, I am going to carefully flip that over, and without pressing it down to the table, I'm going to add a little bit of tape around the edges so that my contact paper doesn't move. And then again, sticky side up, I'm just going to place my dried flowers or leaves or whatever I have here in a design. It's generally easiest to work from the center out. When I have a design that I'm happy with, I'm just simply going to cut another piece of that contact paper to go right over the top. And I'm going to pull that backing off. Try not to let it curl in on itself, and place that down right over top. And then you can trim your edges. You can reinforce that top with a little bit of tape if you need to, but generally the contact paper sticks to itself pretty well. And then you're just going to punch a hole wherever you decide the top is. And you can take a little bit of string or yarn and tie a loop so that you can hang up your sun catcher. And here's the finished project. So you can see it looks good from both sides, so it's fine if it turns in the sun. It'll look really good with the light shining through it because you get the color on those flowers much better. You can use flowers, leaves. Remember, you could even use some sequins if you wanted more sparkle in there. Anything that's flat that you like the design of. Our second project also involves flowers from the garden. For this project, you're going to want to use the brightest colored flowers and petals that you can find. We're actually going to be pressing the color out of the petals into our paper using a hammer. So I'm going to take a piece of watercolor paper, and I'm going to do two separate projects with this. So I'm going to do one piece of artwork, and I'm also going to make a bookmark. So I'm going to basically just separate out one section of this and use that as a bookmark. So I'm going to kind of just eyeball that and fold it and cut that. And that gives me the opportunity to try out a couple of different designs. Depending on the flowers that you choose to use, you might want to try them out on a test piece before you lay out your design. Not every color transfers. So for example, these forget-me-nots with their light blue color, they don't transfer at all. These flowers with the dark purple are much more likely to transfer, but even so, you might want to test it out and make sure that that color comes through before you go through the effort of laying out a design. So I have my bookmark cut out here, and I have it on a cutting board, and I'm going to use some masking tape to attach it so that it doesn't move while I press the flowers onto it. Once I have that lightly secured to my cutting board, I'm going to lay out my design. When I have a freeform design that I'm happy with, I'm going to take a piece of paper towel and set that over top of it, and I'm also going to secure that with my masking tape. And then I'm going to take my hammer and I'm going to pound those flowers. So you'll be able to see the color come through, and you're just going to keep pounding until that color comes all the way through and you can see a fair amount of color through your paper towel. It should be about equal on the bottom so you can kind of visualize what it's going to look like. When you can see all of your colors coming through that paper towel and you feel like everything's fairly flattened down there, you can take that masking tape up and remove your paper towel. And you can lift that masking tape off of your bookmark too. You can see some of the flowers are still stuck to there. They're very thoroughly pounded into that paper, but you can just take your fingers and gently peel those off. If that doesn't work, you can also take a knife or scissors and gently scrape them off. You don't want to smear the color, so you want to be very careful if you do it this way. Here you can see the flower transfer bookmark. The colors might lighten a little bit as they dry, but it shouldn't be drastic, especially if you're using really dark or very colorful flowers. For my second color transfer artwork, I'm going to be using that larger piece of paper and some red tulip petals. So I have this taped down just very lightly in the corners. I'm going to lay out my design. And I'm going to use one of those purple flowers for that center so that I get a dark center in there. Place my paper towel over top, press that all down flat, and then you can secure this as well. And then follow the same method. And pound out those flowers until you see all of that color on the top. It takes a while, but as you continue to work through it, you'll see more and more of that color come through that top layer, meaning that it's also going into the bottom layer. When I peel back that paper towel, you can see the petals are thoroughly destroyed and the color is transferred. And here's what our finished tulip artwork looks like. You can see there are some clear edges around the outside. That's where the color is pushed out from the petal and kind of ends up depositing around the edges. You can see these two different flowers led to two very different designs. This is a fun technique to try out because you get a lot of different variation with the flowers. They don't always turn out looking the way you think they will. Again, go for the brightest, darkest flowers that you have. You're going to get the best transfer from those. I hope you enjoyed today's flower artwork projects. If you have any questions, comment below and I'll help you out. Have a wonderful weekend.